Now, most people live their life trying to avoid problems. But what if I told you that the size of your success is directly tied to the size of the problem you're willing to overcome? What if problems are the greatest opportunity for you to grow and reach your next best level in life? If those things are true, the question isn't how do we avoid problems? But the question then becomes, how do I become an effective problem solver in a way that's going to propel me forward and help me to become a greater person of value? And today we're going to talk about just that. And by the end of this, I'm going to give you a powerful framework that will help you to be able to solve problems with confidence and discipline. Now, in life, there are 4 things you can always guarantee: death, taxes, change, and problems. Number 1, everybody's going to die. As you can see, the world is just constantly changing. Every minute, every second. Uncle Sam always gets his cut, as you already know. Just take a look at your check. And I have never met a person that has not had a life without problems. So you have to accept that fact first, that there is no such thing as a life without problems. It doesn't matter how tall you are. It doesn't matter your age, how much money you have. It doesn't matter your status in life. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, red, blue, green. It does not matter. A life without problems doesn't exist. Everybody has them. Doesn't matter if you're high. Doesn't matter if you're low. Doesn't matter if your mama is Shanae Jenkins and your daddy is Tyrone Biggums. It does not matter. A life without problems doesn't exist. And the faster you can accept that, the easier your life becomes. Because now you aren't living your life in the hope of a future that does not exist. You aren't living your life thinking, if I can just get this job, if I can just get in shape, or if I can just find a suitable partner, then all my problems will go away. That's not reality. A life without problems does not exist. So you have to accept that if you want to become an effective problem solver. Now, typically when it comes to problems, people view having problems as a bad thing. But in reality, problems is a good thing. Because think about it. Every time you solve a problem, you just learn something new and you just learned a new skill. You just grew within yourself. Let's say if you have a money problem and you end up solving that money problem. Number 1, you just learned the skill of how to make your money grow for you. You just gained a new perspective on money because in order to solve that, your perspective of money had to change. And you just developed a new level of resilience because solving that problem didn't just happen overnight, but it was a certain level of discipline. It was an internal process that had to happen to help you to be able to see money differently, to help you to be able to learn that new skill, right? So you just learned all those 3 things. Without problems, there's no growth, there's no strength, there's no progress. Think about a power lifter. A power lifter doesn't get strong by avoiding heavy weight. They get strong by lifting heavy weight. It's the same thing with us in life. We don't grow and get to that next level by avoiding our problems. We grow and get better by solving our problems, by having a strategy and becoming an effective problem solver. That's how we grow. That's how we get better. That's how we build a new level of discipline. That's how we become the person that we want to become. We solve problems. So the way you attack your problems, the way you assess your problems is going to determine if you grow and get strong or if you stay weak. Now, this is why we should want problems in our lives. Now, we just don't want any kind of problems, right? We want high quality problems, not low quality problems. Low quality problems are problems that cause you to live below your potential. They're problems that distract you from your purpose. We don't want those type of problems. Stressing over bills, stressing over no income, tripping over a relationship that you know is not good for you, going in debt over buying stupid stuff, material things, liabilities. Those are low quality problems. We don't want those problems. You want to stay away from those problems. And you want to stay away from the people who are constantly complaining about those problems. Instead, you want high quality problems. High quality problems are problems that push you closer towards your purpose, help you to be who you were created to be. These are problems that stretch you, but they don't break you in the process. These are problems that make you a greater person of value. These are problems that help you to grow. They help you to expand, right? These are problems like having your business grow faster than expected. Having so many opportunities come your way that you don't know which ones to take and you don't know which ones to turn down because all of them are good, right? These are problems like having so much money that you don't know what to invest in to make your money grow for you. These are the type of problems that we want. These are high quality problems. And successful people, they search for high quality problems. They look for people who are solving high quality problems. They want to be around those people who have high quality problems, not the people with low quality problems, right? It's about choosing your challenge. You can have the challenge of being broke, or you have the challenge of managing wealth. You can have the challenge of being out of shape, or you can have the challenge of pushing yourself in the gym and becoming a greater person of value and winning within yourself. It's about choosing your challenge. We can't escape problems, but what we can do is we can choose better ones. And that's what successful people do. Now, one of the reasons that people struggle with seeing problems as good and they view their problems as bad is because most people have been trained to see their problems as bad from childhood, right? In society, problems equal failure. Think about it. In school, you're punished for making a mistake. They prioritize getting the right answer versus creative problem solving. Parents, unintentionally, they teach their kids to avoid problems. They praise you for avoiding problems versus your creative process, whether you got the right answer or not, right? They praise the reward versus the process. Jobs, you're typically rewarded. You're typically given a raise or a promotion based off of you avoiding problems, not necessarily solving them. If you make a minimal amount of mistakes, then great. Here's your promotion. If you're constantly making mistakes trying to solve problems, because you're going to make mistakes solving problems. It just happens, right? If you're making a whole bunch of mistakes, you typically don't get the reward of promotion. But if you avoid mistakes and you do very well, then promotion. So many people have been trained by society to see problems as bad, to see problems as failure. And this is why people spend so much time and energy in their problem versus creating solutions. This is why people are constantly complaining. If you go on social media, you go on Facebook, everybody's complaining. The problem, versus coming up with a solution. We don't need more. We already know the problems. The problems are evident. The problems are clear. We understand that. What is the solution? Right? That's what we got to get to. Now, there are two things that always makes your problem worse. That's time and attention. The more time you spend thinking about your problem, the bigger your problem's going to get. The more attention you're feeding your problem, right? The more time you spend complaining about it, the more time you spend talking to other people about it, the bigger your problem's going to get. I remember when I was in college and number one, I wasn't in shape, didn't have any money. I was wondering why my life wasn't working. And looking back, I realized that it wasn't working the way I wanted it to work because I spent too much time and energy and attention on the problem versus creating solutions. I spent more time complaining about the problem and the situation I was in and why things weren't working versus spending time on the solution and making myself a greater person of value, because I had every opportunity to grow and get better and become that person of value that I needed to become. But instead, I spent more time complaining. And the more time I spent complaining and the more time and energy I spent on the problem, the bigger my problem got. So time and attention on the problem always makes your problem worse. It always makes your problem bigger. You want to spend less time on the problem, more time on the solution, thinking about solutions, right? So let's talk about this R.I.S.E method. So the R.I.S.E method is a framework that I use in solving problems. Now, these are problems that are going to affect you 5-10 years from now. These are the big problems, right? And the first step in the R.I.S.E method is you want to recognize the true problem. I say recognize the true problem because many people don't solve the problem, or they don't see the problem for what it is. Instead, they have a story that they tell themselves about the problem. Now, how do you know if you are recognizing the true problem or the story you're telling yourself about the problem? Typically, you know, is if you don't have any fault and you aren't taking any responsibility or accountability, you're likely looking at the problem based on the story you're telling yourself about it versus actually the true problem. Because if you're involved, there's some type of responsibility, there's some type of accountability, there's something that you did or can do or could have done to prevent that problem. Don't know what it is, but if you're likely have no fault, if you likely have no responsibility, you're likely looking at the problem. You're not looking at the true problem, but you're looking at the story you decide to tell yourself about the problem. Right? So you always want to make sure you're recognizing the true problem and looking at the problem from all different angles. And the way you recognize the true problem is just stepping out of the situation. Right? If you're having problems in your household, if you're having problems in a certain space, leaving, right? Getting as far away from the problem as you can, because that's going to give you time to think. It's hard to see the full picture when you're in the frame. So you want to step out of the frame so you can be able to see the full problem. Because if you're constantly staying in the problem and you're constantly still invested in the problem, then it's going to be hard to identify the true problem, right? Because you're likely going to be in protective mode. So you want to recognize that you want to recognize the true problem. Number two, you want to identify what's in your control, right? Because now we're trying to work our way to a solution versus focusing on the problem. You have to first understand the problem, but then you want to start working to a solution. So you want to identify what things are within your control. Now, there are three things that's always going to be in your control. That's your attitude, your actions, your beliefs, right? The attitude you have toward the situation, toward yourself, toward other people, your actions that you take, and what you decide to believe about the situation, right? Those are three things that's always in your control. I had a kid at 17 years old, and I used to blame life, everything that you want to think of, everything under the sun. I used to blame everything except for myself, right? And it wasn't until I decided to shift my perspective that I began to realize that this was one of the best situations that ever could have happened to me, because it allowed me to build the strength that I needed to build in order to become the person that I need to become, so I can serve and impact the world in a positive way. Right? So that's a certain belief that I decided to take on. It's a certain attitude that I decided to take on. So there's three things that's always in your control: your attitude, your actions, your belief. Learn to control those three things. Identify those things that's within your control as you work toward a solution. Next, you want to specify what you want. Like, what do you want to get out of this situation? Of course, you have a problem. What do you want the solution to be? What do you want it to look like? Be as specific as possible. If you have a money issue, if you have a money problem, how much money do you want to make? Right? How much money do you want to bring in a month, a week, a day? If you have an issue with your spouse or your relationship or your partner, what do you want to feel? How do you want them to treat you? Be as specific as possible. Because if you don't know what you want, you don't know what to ask for. You don't know what to aim for. You don't know what to shoot for. You don't know what to go after. So you want to be as specific as possible in identifying what you want. And last, you just want to execute, right? Execute on the thing that you want. Execute on the solution. So many people, they get to the edge, they do this whole process, they identify the problem, they identify what's in their control, so they make sure they aren't asking for things that's outside of their control. Because remember, you can't control other people's actions, their decisions. You can't control anything external. The only things you can control are internal, right? The things that's within your control. So you identify the things that's in your control. You identify the specifics of what you want. Some people get all the way to the end and then they don't execute, right? They identify that the relationship's not good for them, that this is really what they want. And then they end up not leaving the relationship. In another 5-10 years, they're still in the same relationship, knowing back then that the relationship is not good for them. But you want to execute, take action. It's not always easy, right? Solving problems is not always easy. But you becoming an effective problem solver and you solving problems is going to make you a better person, right? So you want to execute on the solution, identify the solution, execute on it. And these are not problems like day-to-day problems that you have to use this R.I.S.E method. These are problems that's going to affect you 5 to 10 years from now. 90% of your problems should be solved quickly without deliberation, without much thought, right? Because this is how you determine if you need to use the R.I.S.E method. Ask yourself, will I be dealing with the consequences of this problem 5 to 10 years from now? The decision that I make today, will it still affect me 5 to 10 years from now? If yes, use the R.I.S.E method. Take your time in solving the problem. If no, solve the problem quickly, get rid of it because you don't need it. It's taking up space, and keep it moving. And it likely won't matter a week from now, a month from now, and you won't be wasting your time on something that is of low value. So again, R.I.S.E method: recognize the true problem, identify what's in your control, specify what you want, execute on solution. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you share this with somebody else in this video. And also, I got a book out, Winning Within, currently available on Amazon. I actually talk about the R.I.S.E method in here. So if you want to check this book out, currently available on Amazon. I appreciate all the supporters, everybody that has already supported me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hope you get value out of that. But don't forget to share, like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch y'all in the next video.